Hello everyone. So this is our midterm group project. This was conducted by these 8 members, and throughout this whole midterm project, we will be discussing about these 4 topics or tasks, and each task were divided among the 8 members. So this whole task was conducted so that we can show you our constructive and intellectual analysis. So I hope you will like it. Thank you.
Hello, I am Sakib Khan. Now I am going to present on the geographical appropriation of political space, how ancient governments used land to maintain, control and manage decision making. The comparison includes two different systems. One is Achaemenid Persian Empire, a monarchy ruled by a king, and the other is ancient Athens, a non-monarchy, specifically a direct democracy. The aim is to understand how both governments organize their territories, govern their people, and use geographical space to support their political systems. It also explores how geography influenced the way power was shared or controlled in these two civilizations. This comparison helps us understand how two very different governments used geography to manage their power. The Persian Empire was a large monarchy that ruled over many different lands and cultures. To stay in control, they divided the land into provinces and appointed governors. This shows how a monarchy uses space through delegation and top-down rule. On the other hand, ancient Athens was a small city-state. It used direct democracy where citizens gathered to vote and make decisions. Instead of dividing the land, Athens kept all political activity within the city and relied on face-to-face meetings. The main purpose here is to show how geography shaped each system. Persia needed structure and communications to control a big empire. Athens used local control to involve citizens more directly, but only a small group was included. By comparing these, we see how political space was organized differently in monarchies and non-monarchies. Political space means how a government manages the land it controls. It's only just about the physical land. It's also about who makes decisions, how rules are followed, and how people interact with power. In monarchies like Persia, there is one ruler at the top. That ruler gives authority to others, like governors, to control different regions. This is called delegation. In non-monarchies like Athens, political space is centered in one place. Citizens gather in assembly to vote directly instead of sending representatives. This system is more local and participatory, so political space tells us a lot about how a government works. It shows how big or small their system is and whether power is shared or held by a few people. Understanding political space helps us compare how monarchies and democracies rule their people and manage their land. The Persian Empire was a large monarchy founded in 6 BC. It was ruled by a king and covered huge areas, including parts of modern-day Iran, Iraq, Egypt, and Turkey. To manage such a large empire, Persia was divided into provinces called satrapies. Each satrapy had a governor known as a satrap who reported directly to the king. These governors collected taxes, maintained order, and made sure the king's rules are followed. The map on this slide shows the vast size of Persian Empire under Darius I. You can see how far the empire spread across Asia, Africa, and Europe. This wide reach made delegation necessary. The king couldn't rule everything directly, so he gave power to others under a strong system. The Persians also built the royal road, which helped them send messages and control the empire faster. Symbols like palaces and royal seals reminded people of the king's power even in distant places. This system shows how monarchy used political space by building structure, communication, and visual symbols of control. Um, Ancient Athens was a small city-state in Greece. Unlike the Persian Empire, it did not have kings or provinces. Instead, Athens used a system called direct democracy. Only adult male citizens born in Athens were allowed to take part. They joined the assembly to vote on laws, discuss public matters, and there was also the Council of 500, which helped prepare those decisions. The map on this side shows Athens and the regions of Attica, which it controls directly. You can see that Athens didn't have provinces or local governors like Persia. All decisions were made in the city itself. People had to come in person to participate. This system worked well for those who lived nearby, but it was harder for people living in the countryside to be involved, since they had to travel with a modern transport. Athens didn't spread its democratic system on the other places, even though it had allies and colonies. So the political space in Athens was local, small, and focused on citizen involvement, but it also excluded many people like women, slaves, and foreigners. Now we can compare how Persia and Athens use political space in different ways. Persia was a centralized monarchy. It ruled a large and diverse empire by dividing it into satrapies, each with a governor. It used roads, royal symbols, and clear chain of command to control everything from the top. This system was strong and helped the king stay in power even over faraway regions. Athens, on the other hand, was a citizen-based democracy within a small area. It focused on face-to-face decision-making in the city. There were no governors or provinces. Instead, citizens joined the assembly and voted directly. While Persia included many regions but fewer people in decision-making, Athens included more citizens locally but excluded many groups like women, slaves, and foreigners. So Persia used political space for expansion and control while Athens used it for participation and local governance. Both systems are shaped by their geography and both show us how land and politics worked together in ancient times.
Hello, this is Shafi. I'll talk about the geography and political spaces were used in ancient time to build and control powerful systems of governments. I'll compare two very different systems, the monarchy of Achaemenid Empire and the non-monarchy of Athens. Both civilizations used their geographical space such as land, cities and infrastructures to organize power and shape their societies. Now I'm talking about geography of the Achaemenid Empire. Achaemenid Empire found by Cyrus the Great around 550 BCE was one of the largest empire ever. It covered land across three continents, Asia, Africa and Europe, from the Indus Valley in the east to the Aegean Sea in the west. It included modern day Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Egypt, and the part of Greece and India. The geography of this empire was very diverse, with mountains, deserts, rivers, fertile plains, and trade routes. The role this vast space, the Persian had to create centralized political system, but they also needed local administrations to handle daily affairs in faraway regions. Babylon, a key political center. Babylon was one of the richest and most powerful cities in the ancient world. It was located into fertile regions of Mesopotamia, which gave which gave it control over important trade routes and agriculture. When Cyrus the Great conquered the Babylon in 539 BCE, he understood its geographical and cultural importance. Instead of destroying Babylon, he respected its religion, templates, and traditions as recorded on the Cyrus cylinder. By doing this, Cyrus gained support from Babylon's Parsis and elites, turning the city into a loyal satrapy of the empire. Babylon remained an important economic and administrative center, linking the east and west part of the Persia. Now let's talk about Persian geography. To march its vast space, the Persian Empire was divided into satrapies. Each satrapy had a satrap who collected taxes, lead the army, and keep law and order. The royal road stretching over 2,500 kilometers connected the capital with distinct regions. This road made communication, trade, and the movement of the soldiers much faster. The Persians also introduced standardized taxes, common currency, and unified laws, which helped connect all regions into one system. By claiming by claiming divine power from Aura Mazda, the Persia king their political control over this large geographical space. Geography of Athenian democracy. Athens, unlike Persia, was a small city state located on the Athenian Peninsula in Greece. Its compact geography made direct citizen participation possible. Around 508 BCE, Cleisthenes introduced reforms that gave more power to citizens and reduced the influence of rich aristocrats. Athens was divided into demes. Demes means neighbors, local neighbors, and tribus, which helped spread political power fairly across the populations. The geography of Athens, close the sea with strong port of the Piraeus, also helped it grow as a center of trade and naval power. Naval power. Civic spaces in Athens. Athens' political geography was built around open public spaces. The Agora, the city's main square, was both a marketplace and the place for discussions, speeches, and political debates. The ecclesia allowed male citizens to vote directly on laws, wars, and politics. The vowels chosen by lottery prepared decisions for the assembly and managed daily affairs. This closed physical space encouraged active citizen participation. However, women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded from politics rights, so democracy was limited. Now I am comparing political spaces. The geography of Persia allowed it to become a vast empire. It focused on controlling large areas through infrastructure like the royal road and the satrapy system, which balanced local autonomy with central power. In contrast, Athens was small and compact, making it easier for citizens to meet, debate, and vote directly. Persia's power was virtual. One king at the top, with governors under him, while Athens had a horizontal system where citizens shared authority. Both systems show how land and space shape governance. Legacy of political geography. The Achaemenid Empire influenced many later empires like the Romans by showing how to govern large and diverse lands through a mix of central control and respect for all local traditions. Athens inspired later ideas of democracy, showing how citizens can govern themselves when geography allows face to face participations. Those two examples show that political systems are often shaped by the land and space they control. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Nazifat Abbasim Turfa, and along with Aisha Zirin, we are going to be presenting about the topic political and administrative hierarchies of Achaemenid Persian Empire and the Roman Republic. So first of all, we are going to be understand about the bureaucracy and administrative hierarchy, where bureaucracy refers to a group of government officials who are appointed to shape the administrative policies, which means that a group of people, they are appointed to help and to run the government, that make sure and they will make sure that the rules are followed by the citizens. It basically organizes the people and a process through a structured and a strict hierarchy with clear rules and a defined roles. Hierarchy is the fundamental, whereas hierarchy is the fundamental principle within an organization, which is structured as a chain of command, which means that it's a system where people are ranked, and it is established on a chain of command where each level of the administrations has their own power and accountable to a higher level. Moving on to the next, here we will be seeing about the bureaucracy as rational governance, where Max Weber, he stated about the bureaucracy is that it was an institutional method for implementing general rules and regulations to a particular situation and made government actions predictable and effective. Where he means is that in the term of bureaucracy, the policies that are made, it has to be consistent to provide a stable and efficient governance system, which will make sure the governance is effective, and whether it's a monarchy or non-monarchy, bureaucracy acts like an engine, which basically helps by following the rules and the regulation and being rational to the system. It basically implies the necessary for structured and rule-based administration. So what Max Weber has stated about the bureaucracy and what he has defined about it, the importance of hierarchy in governance aligns closely with Max Weber theory of bureaucracy. That's what I have found, which is titled with the importance of the hierarchy in governance. So it's basically serves as a pathway of communication that links within an organization. So Max Weber has stated that it is a chain of command. So it also is a chain of command. So that's why the communication basically creates a formal communication which ensures the instruction and the decisions flow efficiently. The next one is the ensures responsibility in each positions, which just as Max Weber has argued about that defined roles and the duties make governance predictable and also effective for a governance in a nation. The next one is the clear hierarchical structures helps the public to trust their governance, which means that if there is no personal implementation of the rules, and if the imperial governance or the higher level, they are making the decisions based on the rules, then it will also be helpful for gaining the trust of their people in the nations. By this, they can also understand that what the citizens want and how the rules and the regulation must be implemented further. Moreover, the supervision of each position ensures uniform implementation of policies. It basically means that the supervision is important because it ensures that policies are implemented uniformly across the region. And the last one is that it prevents the abuse of power by being accountable to their work. As they have to, as supervision is important, so they have to report to the higher levels, and that's why they can then that's why it can also prevent the abuse of power, power, and they can also be accountable to their work by own. So now let's take a quick look of how hierarchy played a vital role into ancient empire, where I'll be covering about the Achaemenid Persian Empire, which is a monarchical bureaucracy. Here, the Persian Empire bureaucracy was structured in five-level hierarchy. This was designed to manage a vaster and diverse empire efficiently under a monarchy. So the king, he was the imperial authority, and he was basically the center of the whole hierarchy system. And then is the other governance flowed from him. And then the next one is the royal court, who are basically the minister or the royal inspectors. So when the king is trying to make a decision, he basically the royal court basically advise him and try and help in the implementation of the rules and regulations. And they also monitors the other lower levels. The satrapies are basically the provincial governors. They were belong to royal or Persian noble family, and they helped and they had their own authority to designated region, but they were still accountable to the king, and they were also very much powerful. Sub-satraps were they were in charge of regional administration, where they work under the satrapies, and they ensured that the orders from the satrapies were carried out. And the last one is the local administration, where they handle the day-to-day local governance very effectively. So now that we have seen how the Persian bureaucracy was structured, now let's see why these hierarchies is so important and what's the purpose of it, which is basically my analysis of it, that how the Persian Empire hierarchy was basically why they were structured like this. It's because the efficient governance over a large area, as the Persian Empire has a very diverse area, so that's why they were divided into a lots of provinces, and it was hard for one person to rule over to this diverse area. That's why there were 5 levels of hierarchies, which made this implemented very effectively, and which also helps to possible to manage the distant provinces as well. The next one is the clear vision of responsibility. Each level knew its duties, from the local administrators to the satrapies, which ensures the accountability and the smooth decisions. Economic stability and military control was very effective by this, because it helps because the satrapies were responsible to collect the taxes and maintained the military troops, while the king and the royal court monitored them to prevent the rebellion as well. It ensures that the economic stability of that nation was economy was stable at that nation. The next one is the carrying out imperial level decisions, which means that the hierarchy acted as a channel to implement the king's decision across the empire. So they make sure that the decisions reach throughout the ground level, from the upper level to the ground level, and all the citizens are getting what the king is trying to implement. And so the Persian administrative hierarchy wasn't just about to control, it was.
Hello everyone, my name is Aisha Zareen. Today I'll present about the political and administrative hierarchies of Roman Republic. We'll explore how these structures functioned, their purposes in governance, and what they reveal about each emperor's values and priorities. I'll also present a comparative analysis of 2 powerful ancient civilizations, the Roman Republic and the Persian Empire. First of all, Roman Republic government overview. The Roman Republic was a unique blend of democracy, autocracy, and oligarchy. Power wasn't held by one person, it was distributed among elected officials, a lifetime Senate, and citizen assemblies. This system was carefully designed to prevent tyranny, encourage elite ambition, and involve citizens in governments, though that involvement was often limited to wealthy male citizens. Roman hierarchy structure. The republic hierarchy had several layers. Magistrates, the consuls and praetors, handled military, legal, and civil affairs. The Senate, made up of elite former magistrates, held enormous influence over policy and finance. Popular assemblies gave Roman citizens a voice in legislation and elections. Tribunes of the plebs were elected to protect common citizens from elite abuse. And as Rome expanded, it relies on provincial governors, usually former magistrates, to rule distant territories. Purpose and function of Roman hierarchies. Each level of these hierarchies serve a purpose. 1. Checks and balances like veto power and term limited help avoid concentration of power. 2. The cursus honorum, a structured path of public service, encourage noble citizens to climb the ladder of responsibility. 3. The tribune system gave the lower class legal tools to resist exploitation. 4. And provinces were administrated to maintain control of Rome's extending borders. Overall, Rome's system was about preserving stability through shared power and civic identity. Oversight and governance in Rome. Governance in the Republic rested on overlapping institutions. The Senate offered continuity and experience. Tribunes provided accountability to the people. Assemblies gave decisions a popular mandate. And provincial governors extended Roman authority and law beyond a postal system, and royal road kept communication the fast and efficient across the empire. Lastly, the comparison of Roman and Persian Empire. Roman Empire aimed to prevent tyranny, while Persian Empire embraced divine kingship. Rome had elected leaders. Persia had hereditary monarchies. Roman oversights came from institution mechanisms, Persians from royal sovereignties. Roman citizens were expected to participate, Persian subjects were expected to obey. Each system reflected its culture. Roman trust in law and duty, Persians in hierarchy and divine order. This is all from me. Now my fellow team members will present the other parts. Thank you for your time and attention.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Good morning. Myself, Anika Tasin Ifti, and my group mate Masum will cover part 3, which is political ideologies and laws of Persia and ancient Athens. In this first part of our comparative analysis, I will delve into the political and legal framework of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, a quintessential example of an ancient monarchy. I will examine its core ideologies, the structure of its law, and how effective this system was in maintaining one of history's largest and most diverse empires. Political ideologies. The political ideology of the Achaemenid Empire was based on centralized, divinely sanctioned monarchy, where the king, called the King of Kings, ruled with divine authority granted by Ahura Mazda, the Zoroastrian god. This religious legitimacy made the king the supreme ruler and mediator between the divine and the people. Beneath the king, power was exercised through a hierarchical bureaucratic authority which was intertwined with noble privilege. The highest administrative and military positions were almost exclusively held by Persian and Median nobles, creating a powerful ruling elite. However, the system's true genius lay in its remarkable tolerant approach to its subject people. The Persian allowed conquered nations to maintain their local customs, religions, and even some of their own leaders as long as they remained loyal and paid their taxes. They created a multicultural empire bounded by allegiance to a single overarching authority. Moving on to the laws of the empire, the ultimate source of law was the king's will, which was implemented through royal edicts and carried out by a sophisticated bureaucracy. This bureaucracy was structured in a clear hierarchy. At the top was the central government in capitals like Susa and Persepolis. The empire was then divided into large provinces called satrapies, each ruled by a powerful government or satrap. These satrapies were further divided into smaller provinces government by sub-satraps, and finally into local districts managed by local leaders. The administrative laws were designed for practical governance, focusing on taxation, justice, military service, and public works. Their success lay in pragmatic legal adaptation. Core laws were uniform but flexible enough to include local legal traditional blending centralized control with local autonomy. Moving to the next slide. Effectiveness in order and good governance. So, how effective were these laws? The evidence suggests that they were remarkably successful. This legal and administrative framework enabled stable rule over a vast and culturally diverse empire for over 2 centuries. This system ensured efficient tax collection from across the realm, which funded monumental infractions. The most famous example is the Royal Road, a highway stretching over 1,500 miles from Susa to Sadris, complete with rest stations, which facilitated communication, trade, and the movement of troops. To prevent the abuse of power, the Persian created a professional bureaucracy with checks and balances. The satraps government civil affairs, while an independent militaries commanders reported directly to the king. Special inspectors, the eyes and ears of the king, conducted audits and supervised the visits to fight corruption and keep the administration efficient. This oversight preserved government integrity. Let's look some real life examples of this system in action. A classical case of tolerant governance is how the empire treated the Jewish people. After Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, he freed the Jews who had been held in captivity and not only allowed them to return Jerusalem but also funded the rebuilding of their temple from the imperial treasury. This was a calculated political move that won a loyalty of a subject population by respecting their religious identity. Another example is the successful integration of different provinces. The Poentian city-state, for instance, were vital naval powers. Instead of conquering them by force, Persian brought them into the empire as allies, allowing them to keep their local rulers and customs in exchange for their loyalty and the service of their faith. This flexible approach was the key to managing a diverse empire without constant rebellion. Moving to the next slide. Failures of laws and Aristotle political cycle. However, the system's greatest strength, its reliance on a strong central monarch, was also its greatest weakness. The empire's stability was heavily dependent on the personal legitimacy and competence of the king. When weak rulers came to the throne or when the bureaucracy became the corrupt and levied excessive taxes, the system began to break down. This loss of royal legitimacy led to satraps rebelling, provinces skidding, and the rapid decline of central control. Aristotle's political cycle suggests that systems decay over a time, a monarchy can turn into tyranny, leading to collapse. The Achaemenid Empire followed this pattern. As its monarchy weakened, it became open a conquest by Alexander the Great. The failure of its laws and loss of central authority fits Aristotle's predictions. Moving to the next slide. Key claims about the monarchical laws. To summarize the key features of Achaemenid law for our later comparison, we can identify four main points. First law emanated from the center. It was the king's word, though often formed after consulting with nobles and experts. Second, the system was created a balance of centralization with local autonomy, allowing it to be both strong and flexible. Third, laws were primarily instruments designed to ensure loyalty, stability, and administrative efficiency. Finally, when the legal system was adaptable, its primary focus was always on maintaining order and hierarchy. So, in conclusion, the Achaemenid Persian Empire provides a powerful case study of monarchical system that achieved extraordinary success through a sophisticated blend of centralized power, bureaucracy efficiency, and a pragmatic policy of tolerance. Its legal and political ideologies were instrumental in building and maintaining a stable world state for centuries, even as its inherent reliance on the monarch left it vulnerable to eventual decline. Thank you, sir. That's all from my side.
Okay, thank you, Anika, for passing the floor. Now, I would like to turn your attention from the centralized monarchy of Persia to a radically different system of governance, the non-monarchy of ancient Athens, known as democratia. Here, I try to explore a world where power resided not with a single king, but with the people themselves. And I try to examine how their unique political ideas and laws shape their society. So, the first question is political ideologies. The political ideology of Athens was built on two revolutionary concepts: people's sovereignty and isonomia, or equity before the law. Equality before the law. This means the ultimate authority to make decisions rested with the citizens, and every citizen was treated equally by the legal system, regardless of wealth or family background. This ideology was put into practice through the broad participation of citizens in making laws and judging legal cases. Unlike a monarchy where a king or his officials make decisions, in Athens, thousands of ordinary citizens were directly involved. The system placed a heavy emphasis on open debate, accountability, and the rotation of office. This entire ideology was deeply rooted in a collective identity that celebrated freedom and fierce resistance to tyranny, an identity that was powerfully reinforced by their experience in the Persian War. Now, the next verse, laws. So, how were laws actually made in Athens? It's a very important question, right? They were passed by the assembly, also known as the ecclesia, where any adult male citizen could speak and vote. The agenda for the assembly was prepared by the Council of 500, whose members were chosen randomly from the citizens' body for a 1 year term. This meant that the laws were direct expression of the people's will. To safeguard justice, Athenians had its famous People's Court with a very large juries, sometimes numbering in the hundreds, and also composed of ordinary citizens. This made it very difficult for wealthy or powerful individuals to bribe or intimidate a jury. Athenians' laws were also not set in stone. They were regularly revised to meet new challenges, always with an emphasis on direct participation from the citizenry. In short, the entire legal structure was designed to protect both the liberty of the individual and the political accountability of its leaders. Now, the next slide. Laws effectiveness in establishing order and good governance. This democratic system proved to be highly effective in many ways because citizens were so involved in the political process. The government enjoyed a high degree of political legitimacy and community engagement. People felt that the state was truly theirs, which in turn fostered innovation, a strong collective identity, and remarkable resilience at the time of crisis. The system provided for direct citizens redress, meaning ordinary people had avenues to seek justice and hold officials accountable. It also had mechanism for swift legal change when needed. Perhaps the most striking proof of its effectiveness was its success in defending against the external threats. And ancient writers like Herodotus noted, the Athenians believed their victory at the Battle of Marathon was a direct result of their freedom. They fought with incredible courage because they were fighting for themselves and their own democracy, not for masters. Now, slide 4. failure of laws and Aristotle's political cycle. However, the Athenian system was not without its flaws. Its greatest strength was the power of the people that could also be considered as its greatest weakness. The democracy was susceptible to demagogy, where a skilled but reckless speaker could pursue the assembly to make disastrous decisions. It was also prone to intense factionalism and mob rule when the legal balance broke down. This weakness became especially clear during times of extreme stress, like the long and draining Peloponnesian War, which led to periodic coups and oligarchic reversal, where the democracy was briefly overthrown. The instability aligned perfectly with what the philosopher Aristotle called his political cycle. Aristotle theorized that all political systems were unstable and the trend to decay. Foreign, a democracy in its extant form could degenerate into mob rule. This chaos would then lead to peoples to desire a strong man to restore order, leading to tyranny or rule by a small group and oligarchy. Athens experienced this great transition, making it a classic example of Aristotle's theory in action. Now, three claims about non-monarchical law, which I actually added to establish a comparative analysis with the monarchical law, which I discussed in the writing portion. So, to summarize the core principle of Athenians' laws for my comparison, I observe four main claims. First, law is enacted by the citizens themselves. Sovereignty isn't held by a king, but is invested in the collective bodies of the assembly in the courts. Second, it's a dense system of checks and participation, with accountability built directly into the instruction. Third, the system main focuses is on political equality, meaning equality before the law and equal opportunity to participate, rather than on enforcing economic equality. Finally, Athens' laws are dynamic and subject to change, so direct citizen input, making the system adaptable but also potentially unstable. In conclusion, Athenians' democracy presents a fascinating and powerful alternate to the monarchy. Alternative to monarchy, it was a system built on the effective and direct participation of its citizens, which fostered incredible innovation, civic pride, and resilience. However, its resilience on the wisdom of the collective also left it vulnerable to internal division and instability. By studying Athens, we gain a deeper understanding on both the immense potential and the inherent challenges of a government truly of the people. With this, I am wrapping up my speech and handing over the floor to the next speaker. Thank you for listening to my part.
Hello, sir. I am Al Amin Shagor, Hassan Mustafiz, and I will be covering part 4, where we will be talking about women in the Han Dynasty and ancient Athens. Let's take a quick journey back to ancient China, to the time of the Han Dynasty. When we hear the word monarchy, we often think of kings and emperors. But what about the women, especially those who lived inside the imperial palace and those who lived outside of it? Let's begin with the imperial women. They were expected to follow Confucian traditions, to be obedient, loyal, and respectful, but some women used those same traditions to gain power. I found it very really interesting how marriage was used as a political tool. The emperor's grandmother often chose his wife, and usually from her own family. That way her family could stay close to power. A bride didn't just marry into the royal family, she brought her whole family's future with her. So women were part of major political plans, even if it didn't look like it on the surface. One example is Empress Lu. She became one of the most powerful person in the empire after her husband's death. She removed rivals, placed her own family members in high positions, and ruled the state through palace politics. She didn't break the rules, she worked smartly within them. Then there's the story of Empress Tuagar-Ni Lu and her son, Emperor Hui. She had his half-brother killed for political reasons, but Emperor Hui didn't punish her. Not because he agreed with it, but because of Xiao. The Confucian idea of respecting one's parents, no matter what, that made me think Confucian values didn't just shape women's behavior, they also shaped the choices of emperors, even when they were hard they still had to follow these moral duties. Now, looking at common women, I saw a different kind of life. Many faced hardship and heavy traditions. Some families even abandoned baby girls during tough times. Still, I was surprised to learn that common women had real rights. They could own property, run businesses, get divorced, and even remarry. That showed me that the Han Dynasty wasn't just about strict control, there were also spaces where women had personal freedom. What also stood out to me was how the Han Dynasty didn't always follow Confucian teachings in practice. While women were expected to act with modesty and obedience, the government often followed the ideas of Moji, who believed in practical ruling, merit, and fairness. This made me realize that even in a society full of rules, people, and especially women, found ways to be flexible, to adapt, and to focus on what worked. Many imperial women didn't just follow moral values, they focused on real life strategy. They placed family members in powerful positions, helped with succession, and used marriage to build alliances. For them, survival and success mattered more than just looking virtuous. That taught me that sometimes even tradition becomes a tool for power. Even ritual has had two sides. The three obedience and four virtues defined a woman's ideal role. Marriage meant losing her identity and becoming part of the husband's family. But in religion, women had strong roles. They worked as wu or spirit mediums and led rituals like rain dances and healing. That showed me that even in silence, women had their own space, spiritual, meaningful, and powerful. And finally, the big question, were these roles oppressive? This made me think about other traditions too, like food binding. At first, it's easy to see it as only a symbol of pain and oppression. But when then I read what historian Dorothy Cole said, that if we only view food binding as victimization, we erase women's voices. Some women actively participated in it not just because they were forced to, but because they saw it as a part of beauty, status, or identity. Over time, what began as a tradition of refinement became something that limited women to domestic world. But whether it oppressive or meaningful often depended on the time, the dynasty, and the political or social climate. That made me realize even painful practices can have complex meanings, and they don't always fit merely into labels like good or bad. Meanwhile, in Japan, women took a different approach. Instead of focusing on physical appearance, many devoted themselves to education and literature. Their somewhat isolated lives were not seen as a limitation, but rather as a way to gain independence and strength from within. In fact, during the 7th century, women held remarkable power in Japan. Half of the emperors were women, and many played key roles in government. This contrast shows us how the culture and tradition can shape women's lives in very difficult ways. Even in neighboring countries, while Chinese women were confined by physical beauty ideals, Japanese women found influence through intellect and leadership. So what did I really learn from all of this? That power that power doesn't always come with a crown or a loud voice. Sometimes it comes through family, through quiet decisions, through working behind the scenes, and then that even in strict societies, women still found ways to shape their world. Thank you, sir.
Hello everyone, I'm Hassan Mustafis and today I'm going to present a discussion about women in non-monarchies in the ancient society. So first I will start with a quotation by the philosopher Aristotle, who said the male is by nature superior and the female is inferior, and the one rules and the other is ruled. So if we discuss this quotation based on the modern perspectives, we can say that this is quite misogynistic, but the ancient society, they did not have that kind of respect again, in terms of women. So if we just talk about the gender relations, we can see in the ancient non-monarchic societies, I mean, it was not very, it was not exception. I mean, I guess the ancient society of Athens, they did give us a science, philosophy, and lots of other things, democracy, how to rule, and also about the basic concepts of the constitution. Aristotle did that. But if we talk about the gender relations, we can see the enormous amount of oppression against women. And the one term is, we can say, one term we can say philocracy. So philocracy, as you can see, it is the extreme form of patriarchy which was followed extensively against women. Women were never considered as full citizens. They never had the privilege of having any political roles. I mean, they were systematically excluded from the society. Also, with like foreigners, migrants, and some classes of people and soldiers, they were excluded systematically, all because the elites can take the power and control and oppress the people. So if we, and this is the, I'm talking about the gender relationships where this has happened. And also we can also argue that these elite people, they defined the roles for the women did not have the independence to define their roles for themselves as the man did, but they were much more imposed on women. And if we see about the legal and economic position of women, it is almost the same. So someone like Solon, who did reform Athens, and he initiated many laws, but in a way he just imposed so many laws against women which was not very helpful. He created laws in such a way that women were treated as legal minors, and also he systematically oppressed women through creating laws. They were known as draconian laws. And also another type of law was known as Kyrios, which is a I related with the Hindu caste system, where you divide people based on their roles, how they were born. But what Solon did, he divided men and women. So it is a kind of caste system, but but based on gender. So women were systematically oppressed. They did not have any economic or legal independence. They could not get any divorce. They were fully dependent on men. And Solon systematically, as you can see, limited their freedom, and their legal autonomy was also not present, which is why they could not have any political roles. And if we discuss it further, let's talk about the women in the an elite house, right? So in the elite house, those women actually did have some kind of independence when it came to economy and everything, but all were dependent on their husband, on their fathers or brothers, etc. They had slaves, but on top of that, if we discuss it more further, they did not have any political or legal power for themselves. I mean, it was always other side of the curtain, right? It was not direct, and the society did not approve that. And also through the draconian laws, as we can see, Solon oppressed women so much, such as for example, in a funeral, I mean, it is the normal expression for any kind of human being, right? So if someone close to you dies, you can cry and you mourn, but this was also restricted for women. I mean, and also they were married at very young age, no divorce rights, and travel restrictions, dress restrictions. I mean, in total way, I can say that if we look at the ancient societies, Athens um, will be the greatest example for hypocrisy. I mean, they talked about this kind of big things about philosophy and everything, but here they did everything backward. They were mostly more focused on power. I mean, as I read everything, I did not actually find any kind of differences between monarchies and non-monarchies. I mean, almost all of them are the same. So in monarchies, you can say that the king and his group actually ruled and oppressed everyone. But here we can see that the elite groups actually, so Solon did some kind of reforms, but the elite groups found a way to to oppress everyone again. So it was not very kind of like the Switzerland system, all right. So they do not have any president or king or anything. A committee rules the country, but at the end, we all know what happens. If we see in the ancient, we see the World War II, they gave the Nazis a special route to preserve their wealth. So this is the thing that happens every time. Like elites do that all the time, and the majority of the people gets oppressed. And this in this discussion we can see these the women suffered the most. So this is the overall view. So in the name of democracy, they actually practiced oligarchy. So they systematically excluded women, slave, foreigners, and also some retired soldiers to have any political or economic motivation. Solon initiated it, and elites used it more further. Now, I have a thesis discussion here. I think that the male elites or all elites, they do that because I think they find everything. They try to have a futuristic view that what kind of people would overthrow them, who would stop them, right? And I think they gathered around one time and they discussed and they talked. They came into a decision that it would be the women who would stop them, because look at the Greek myths. In the Greek myths, women were represented as stronger than men, but in reality they were oppressed, right? So I think this is how they feared the most. And if we look at the history, there are also in those oppressive times, we also see some first women philosopher, first women doctor, first women scientist. So women actually found a way to express themselves, and actually they were successful in preserving their intellectual views. Like the we can relate it with the Jews, of course. And also when it comes to morality, we can see that men had double standards. I mean, they are the ones who are actually polluting their blood, if we talk with a narrow view. So we can see that they had too many sexual partners, but it was the women who were targeted the most. But it was the man who was the main reason why there were so many bastards. Sorry for my language, but this is the actual term in the Athens. But it was the laws were specifically created for women. I don't know why. But if we try to relate it with the modern analogy, let's talk about America. So America is a very very rich country, the number one country in terms of foreign power, soft power, and everything. If we look at the modern history right now, America is slowly shifting to the oligarchy because there are so many billionaires, millionaires, so many rich people. And if I just included Roe versus Wade here. If we look at the lifestyle of these billionaires, somehow they don't believe in birth control, right? So it is said that they are the ones who actually influenced the lawmakers, the congressmen and women, and the senators of the Senate, and they were the ones who voted to overturn this kind of law, which was very very helpful for women. But now even the rape victims or women who are sick, they can't have a baby right now, so they need abortion. Even these patients cannot have the abortion now, all because the law was reversed, and now it is thought to be a criminal act, right? So they have a time after 4 months or 5 months or 3 months, some states You cannot have any abortion anymore, which is quite unnecessary and unlawful according to my view. I think that the person who is giving birth should have the utmost right to decide whether she will have the baby or not. I think there will be no discussion on that. But as you can see, this kind of thing is happening all over the world, and even now women are suffering. If we look at if we look at the farewell speech of Joe Biden, he specifically warned everyone about the growing oligarchy in America, and he talked about these things, which we can see that there isn't anything really happening. The latest the president of America. I mean, we all know what kind of a man he is. The man he is in the Epstein files, for God's sake. But I guess, I mean, it is politics. So in conclusion, these are my discussions, and I hope you understand my core message, which is that women have been suffering throughout their lives, whether it's ancient or modern, but we men have just given them the illusion of freedom and independence, and we are constantly oppressing them.